All right, so at this point, you have you've gone through the worksheets 1 through 6. So you've learned the names of all the pitches. You've learned more than one name for many of them. You've learned all the pairs of enharmonic tones, and you've learned how to use the names of the pitches in a chromatic scale, in a chromatic context where you're going up and down by a half step, which almost never happens in Irish music. So, so that's not super useful knowledge for Irish music. It does happen on occasion. It's not like that never happens, but it's not that frequently done. But it is good to know that, so that it's possible to just understand how sharps and flats work without the confusion of all the enharmonic tones all at once. So with a chromatic scale, when you go up, you use sharps. When you go down, you use flats. With other kinds of scales, that is not the case. They don't really work that way. And you'll understand how they work once we get through the next few worksheets, which are all about creating scales. So a scale in the upcoming worksheets is a way of understanding a key. If you take all the principal notes in a key and arrange them in ascending or descending order, step by step, that is a scale. And the reason to create a scale is to have a better ability to understand a key, to see the relationships within a key more clearly and in a more simplified way. So we're going to go through and just create a bunch of scales. But what is a key? So that raises that question. And a key is a way of understanding a piece of music. And a key that consists of two components. So if you say, for example, A major, you have A and you have major. And A is the tonic of the key, which is or some people call that the tonal center. So a piece in A major, the pitch A is the tonal center of that key, or the tonic of that key. And that means that all the other pitches in that key get their meaning from their relationship to A. And it also means that A has what you would call the greatest sense of repose or resolution. So most pieces that are in A end on A. Not all pieces do, because sometimes you don't want to end with a sense of resolution. Also, there are other pitches in A that do have a sense of resolution, just not quite as great as A. But you could end on one of them, and the logic of the melody might dictate that you would end on a different note, and that would be a good ending. That happens in some cases. But mostly, a tune or a piece of music that is in A will end on A. And then major is the mode, and that defines how all the other pitches in that key will relate to the tonic. So the tonic is the tonal center of the key, in this case A, and the mode, in this case major, defines how all the other pitches will relate to the tonic. And you can think of it as, think of a tune, say, as a story, let's say with 7 characters, because the key of A major has 7 different pitches in it. And if it were a story about me, I would be the tonic. So my name is Sean, so this story is about Sean. And if it had 6 other characters, we could have like my wife, my daughter, my mother, and then I have 3 sisters, so my older sister, my middle sister, and my youngest sister. So that would be 6 other characters. Sean, Sean's wife, Sean's daughter, Sean's mother, Sean's older sister, Sean's middle sister, and Sean's youngest sister. And we could tell a story using those characters about me. I'd be the main character. But we could also, with those same 7 characters, tell a story about my mother, say. So my mother's name is Judy. So the story would be about Judy, and the characters would be Judy. She would be the main character, or the tonic in this case. Judy's son, I'm now Judy's son instead of Sean, so I'm defined by my relationship to her in this story. Judy's oldest daughter, Judy's middle daughter, Judy's youngest daughter, Judy's daughter-in-law, my wife, and Judy's granddaughter, my daughter. So they're all defined in that case by their relationship to her, and the story then would be about her. So you can think of the tonic as sort of the main character of the tune, and the mode as the way all the other characters relate to the tonic. So, and like, we could have a story with 6 characters about my mom that I wasn't in. You could tell a story involving my mom and my dad and, my 3 sisters and one of my mom's sisters and one of her brothers, so it would be just Judy, and then Judy's husband. In this case, it was her first husband. My dad passed away. So Judy's first husband, Judy's oldest daughter, Judy's middle daughter, Judy's youngest daughter, one of Judy's sisters, and one of Judy's brothers. And so those characters have somewhat different relationships. Some of them are the same, some of them are a little bit different. So that would be sort of a different mode in this case than the original story with a few other characters. So that is one way of thinking about this. But basically, the tonic is the tonal center of the key, the pitch that has the greatest sense of resolution, and the mode defines how all the other pitches relate to the tonic. In this case, we would have A major. So what we're going to do, there are several different modes. In Irish music, there's the major, there's minor, and there's more than one kind of minor, really. Then there's a mode which in Western classical music theory, the technical name for that is mixolydian, but in Irish music it's typically just called modal because it's not really major or minor, so they think of, in Irish music typically tunes are either major, minor, or modal. But you could call them, using the terms of Western classical music theory, major, Dorian, which would be one of the minor modes, natural minor, or Aeolian, which is another one of the minor modes used in Irish music, or mixolydian, which would be called modal. And this will become more clear as we go through the worksheets. And also, many tunes don't stay strictly in one mode. In some tunes, the mode is kind of ambiguous. Many tunes change mode, in some cases, tunes will change tonic. So one part of a tune will have one pitch as the tonic, and another part of a tune will switch to a different pitch as the tonic. You can think of telling a story about my mom, and then maybe you would tell another story about my dad using all the same characters, which would, and then you'd go back to talking about my mom, but you'd not understand more about her because of the focus on my dad, and then their bits of their relationship might be more clear or whatever, So anyway, these modes are abstractions from the music itself. Music doesn't necessarily strictly fit into these modes. In many cases it does, but in many cases it doesn't. And once you understand them, these different sort of basic patterns, you'll be able to see when the music fits into them and when the music doesn't, and understand to what extent they are useful in understanding Irish music, which, they're pretty useful in understanding Irish music. But Irish music certainly doesn't have to fit strictly into these modal categories. And, Western classical music also, which is where these terms came from, also doesn't fit strictly into these categories. So it's sort of like, if you look at this shirt I'm wearing, you might say this shirt is gray. You'd say that guy in that gray shirt over there. But upon closer inspection, there are parts of my shirt that are not gray. But the overall effect is gray, so you would just call it gray. So, you might say that tune is major, although there are notes in it that don't, strictly speaking, fit into the major mode, but the overall effect is major. And in some cases, the overall effect might not be strictly major or minor or any particular mode, so you might, like, that would be like a plaid tune or something that can't be defined by one particular color. But these categories generally are useful in understanding Irish music, and you'll see how useful they are once you understand them, So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start by constructing major scales. So we're going to do all the major scales, all 12 major scales. Not that all 12 major scales are really used in Irish music, but once you've constructed all major scales, all 12 major scales, you have a really solid concept of the concept of major, what major is. And so that's what we're going to do. And it doesn't really take that long. And once you've done it one time, you pretty much never have to do it again. So, it'll help you understand the concept, and it won't take too much of your time. And it may be useful down the road, and it may not. And if not, and you forget most of these scales, that's totally fine. The ones that are used in Irish music all the time, you'll certainly remember those and have a deeper understanding of them for having gone through all the major scales.